talk about internships and co-ops. So hopefully y'all are in the right place and everything. My name is Susan Benzel. I have worked for the College of Engineering for about 2.5 years now. And I actually started here 2.5 years ago. However, I got my degree here a long time ago in electrical engineering. And I also have a son who got his master's in electrical engineering just a couple of years ago. So I have a lot of knowledge for quite some time. And so hopefully we can help you out with any questions you have. Again, our main focus will be internships and co-ops. And I have a fabulous panel here to help out today. And so I'm going to have each one of them introduce themselves. There are students who I know you are really interested in hearing from who have participated in internships and co-ops. So let's go ahead and we'll start with Peter because his picture has come up big for me right now. Peter, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Peter. I'm a fifth year in the mechanical and biomedical engineering program. I'm currently doing a co-op. I did a co-op term a couple semesters ago, so I turned my 5 years into 6 years. But yeah, spent some time in Toronto and then Cincinnati and then Dallas, and here I am. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Peter. Emma Kate, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Emma Kate. I am from Fort Collins and I'm doing the CBE and BME, so chemical and biomedical here. And then I have done an internship with the SHORE program here, as well as a couple other labs that I can talk about.
Great. Thank you, Emma Kate. David, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm David. I'm also from Fort Collins. I'm a fourth year computer engineering major. I'm also doing a minor in computer science. And I've done a few internships at Hewlett Packard Enterprise and AMD.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm a first year biomedical and mechanical engineering major, so the same major as Peter. And I did an internship over the summer in my junior year of high school at CU Denver's tissue engineering lab, and then I'm currently working through the SHORE program at one of the labs in the Scott Bio building. So if anybody wants to talk about that, I think Emma Kate also said that she's in the SHORE program. So
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. So we have, if you kept track, you're a first year, second year, fourth year, and fifth year. Third year was the only year I missed, but hopefully we've got some good coverage. For internships, research, co-ops, some great resources for all of you. And before we get into a few questions, I want to put up a single slide. I know that as I do this panel each semester, there are quite a few people who don't know the difference between internships and co-ops. And I will confess, until I started working here 2.5 years ago, I did not know that difference either. And so I'm going to put up a quick slide to just show a chart that compares the two, and then we can get into our questions. So give me just a second here and I'll share this. Okay. Can any of you give me a quick thumbs up? You can see the slide. Yeah. Okay, very good. So this slide just gives a quick overview of the difference between internships and co-ops. So internships, I think, at least for most of the students I've interacted with and prospective students, internships are what students are more familiar with. These are usually the positions you take typically over the summer. They're about 12 weeks. You do this usually in between your college semesters, and they usually last for a single term, although some will sometimes keep you on during the school year. And for some internships, like if you interned for Intel one summer, they will often invite you back the next summer, kind of thing. Co-ops, on the other hand, the most typical way we see students do them at CSU is they will start in the spring semester of their sophomore year. And a co-op will actually go for 3 full semesters. And so as you see later on in this chart, a co-op will usually alter your graduation date and will lengthen your schedule in school and add a year to it. With co-ops, again, students will usually start spring semester of sophomore year, and then they will typically go that next semester in the summer. So if you were a sophomore right now in the spring of 2021, you do your co-op right now as well as summer of 2021, come back to school for a year, and then finish up the following summer. Now, again, that's typical. I have seen students do all kinds of different things and different arrangements for co-ops, but they are typically 3 semesters long. As it says here on this chart, it will alter your school schedule. You do get credit for a co-op, typically 1 credit each semester. So while you are not taking classes, you get a credit for the co-op. You usually have to write some kind of report about your experience that semester. And it's really important to understand that that credit allows you to still be active at CSU, and thus things like student loans won't come due, because student loans, once you are done with school or you're not taking credits at an accredited university, you would have to start paying them after a certain period of time. So with the co-ops, it's really important that you get your 1 credit so that you don't have to start paying student loans and things like that. And I've kind of jumped down to the bottom of this chart. I'm kind of jumping all over it. Sorry about that. But one thing to note about co-ops is they definitely do have a financial impact that is positive. And I just want to be really clear on that, because some students hear about a co-op and think, oh, I'm going to delay my graduation by a year. Is it really worth it? I think the students who have done them will tell you yes, and Peter can comment far more on that than I can. But a big part of it is the pay is really good. Your scholarships still will continue. So if you go off to do your co-op, your scholarship will get put on hold and then will resume when you get back to CSU. So those are some of the different areas. I think the only one I didn't touch on this chart is that internships, typically you'll get a chance to work in just 1 area, say for the summer. Whereas with a co-op, since you'll be there for 3 full semesters, you usually get to experience some different areas and or experience one particular area of engineering in great depth. So I just wanted to put that up to set the stage a little bit to help people understand the difference. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And as we warm up with all of you in the audience with a few questions, I want to ask each of our panelists just briefly to give their input on why they chose CSU and why they have stayed at CSU. So we can go through again, and I'll just go through it the same order again. So Peter, if you want to tell all of our prospective students why you chose CSU and why you stayed here.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess for context, I was and spent my high school years in Dallas, which good food, but I was getting a little restless there. And then, everyone that I knew, I went to a really big high school and everyone was going to A&M or University of Texas or Texas State. And I felt like I needed to kind of try something new and not be around all the same people again. And so I started kind of looking at schools out of state, and then I came to tour CSU. The thing that really caught my eye was I knew I wanted to do something in the STEM field. I wasn't quite sure what it would be. And I saw this dual program, mechanical and biomedical engineering, which most schools don't have. Most, you just do 1 degree. And then if you do 2 degrees, it's like 5 or 6 years. Or like usually 6 years, whereas here it's 5. I don't know, maybe that's incorrect. But I came up here and just quite honestly, I just fell in love with Fort Collins. I fell in love with the campus, learned about the 3D printing lab, which I think David works at, and just like some of the other cool opportunities. And, you're an hour away from Estes Park. So as someone who's not from Colorado, a lot of my decision had to do with it being Colorado. But then once I got to Colorado State, I'm in love with the university. So I have no reason to leave. It's awesome here. So
Very good. Thanks, Peter. How about you, Emma Kate?
So my story was a little bit of the opposite. I grew up in Fort Collins, so when I started looking at colleges, I also really wanted to go out of state and really refused to even tour CSU. And then it ended up being my mom that forced me to go on a tour, and I absolutely fell in love with the campus. I loved everything about it. Everyone was so welcoming. And then I came to an engineering exploration day when it was still in person, found out about the dual program with biomedical engineering and chemical engineering. I was really drawn to biomedical, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to fully commit to only that. I really also liked the chemical aspect. So it just gave me a good opportunity to do both. And then I've stayed at CSU because the community here. I feel like everyone really wants you to succeed here, all the professors, all of my peers, and I just had a really good time. It's just great to have a community in all your classes. It's not super competitive or you feel like people are trying to do better than you, but everyone is really just helping each other out, which is super nice.
Very good. Thanks, Emma Kate. David.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm also from Fort Collins. So kind of a similar story, but also slightly different. So I applied to a bunch of colleges, had to look at, okay, I can get this from this college, and CSU ended up being the best option, just hands down, because of the excellent engineering program. And also the proximity to home was nice as well. That was kind of a plus. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Eric?
I grew up in Golden, so hour down the road, down I-25, and my dad went to CSU, and I have a bunch of relatives that go to CSU still. So it was definitely one of the big colleges I was looking at when I was applying. But it was like a lot of the people say, when you visit campus, it's just gorgeous, and like the people there are just super just like welcoming and like very kind people. And also I agree with what Peter said about the flexibility in the BME pairing programs. That was a big draw for me, especially with the fact that they kind of give you a good look at both majors, and you really have 2 degrees. It's really kind of a unique program.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Okay. And with that now, I'm going to turn it over to our audience to ask questions. And I'm going to pull up the chat so I can see it in case you want to ask questions in there. So feel free to either unmute yourself and ask a question or to place something in the chat, and I'll take a peek at that as well.
What are some of the popular co-op or internship options that could be either one for mechanical engineering students, namely in aerospace or energy?
Good question. Anyone on the panel who wants to answer can, but I have a list here that I'm going to cheat and look at so that I have all of my things up here. So we have quite a few companies actually that we work with in mechanical and aerospace. We do things with folks like Lockheed Martin. So definitely more in that aerospace, and with Ball Aerospace or Ball Corporation as well. As far as other mechanical type things as well, Cummins, Diversified Machine Systems, General Dynamics, I'm sure I'm probably skipping a few, Hewlett Packard, even though that's mostly electrical. I have an Emmy Scout Scholar who is applying there right now. Definitely still do some of the mechanical work there. Honda, Train, through my list to see who else. NASA, we had a student who did a co-op at NASA and is now working there, so really cool. Eric, you had an input?
Yeah, I was actually going to say that a really good option, because I think you said like something related to aerospace and energy, is one of the, I'm not sure which dean he is, but Dr. Marchese runs the Powerhouse Lab, which is a really cool, just pretty like large scale energy lab that's not too far from campus. So it's a really good like local opportunity through the school to get your hands dirty with some really cool like alternative fuel stuff. I know a couple people that are working there right now and they really enjoy it. But also like HP is local, and trying to think of any other opportunities that are kind of more local to Fort Collins, because I think someone in the chat asked about local opportunities. But
is that power plant
yeah.
walkable or bikeable?
The Powerhouse is, yes.
Yeah.
So I guess to add to that point, I know people have worked internships and have been hired at Caterpillar and Cummins. Those aren't local. But then here in Fort Collins, there's a company, Woodward, that's a big engineering firm. They do a lot of work in the aerospace industry for like Lockheed Martin. And then there's also Wolf Robotics, which is more of, they do a lot of like robotic welding and stuff. But those are two local companies that I know of. And
Excellent.
OtterBox, as Rachel just said.
Oh, very
Someone
good.
said OtterBox, I saw.
Very good. Internships. Okay, I see the local question too. Very good. Yeah, we also have like Stryker. We have tons of them. Yeah, I'm looking at locally, like New Belgium Brewery, you're right, who hires some. So a fun place to go work as well. Does that help? Adrian, I know you originally asked.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yes. Other questions? Questions for our panelists about their experience?
Has anybody here, another question, gone on education abroad, and how would that affect something like a co-op if you're doing something over multiple years, but then you also take a year or so to do a education abroad?
Have any of you, the four of you, done education abroad? I don't think so, but I won't swear by it. No. Okay. So I can tell you though that we do have a few of our students and a few I work with who have done education abroad. It's going to totally depend on how you decide to do your education abroad. I had one student decide just to do summer, went over the UK and just did it in the summer to not derail schedule, but was able to take a mechanical engineering class as well as some intensives on Shakespeare. So that was really cool. That was one of our Scott Scholars who did that. I had another one who did go and do a semester in Spain. That was this last spring. And of course, it ended halfway through. She had to come home due to COVID. But despite the fact she went over and did that semester abroad, it did not impact her schedule overall. And so she is still on target to graduate in 4 years. She's a single major student. She's not the biomedical. One thing I will tell you is study abroad is definitely very achievable for an engineering student. The best bit of advice I would give you, whether you end up at CSU or anywhere else, to be quite honest, talk with your advisor early on to let them know that's what you have in mind so that you can structure your schedule and find a place where it will not impact your schedule if that is your desire. So.
Yeah, and
Right,
just to
thank
add
you.
to that, I wasn't able to go abroad because of just COVID related things, but I was fully planning on being abroad in the Paris program this semester. I'm CBE, so I know you mentioned you were interested in MEC. I'm sure it'd be a little bit different, but I know for CBE, at least they have a really great program where you stay fully on track. They have a bunch of different chemical engineering courses that you would take in Paris. I'm almost positive they have very similar for MEC as well. So I'm sure you could just choose a different semester for a co-op, and they really do make it pretty easy. There's a lot of setups, programs for it, so you're not on your own for it when you're trying to decide how to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
I see Cole had a question about what year being the most popular for internships. I think for me, the companies I worked for bent the rules a little bit, but they're usually looking at juniors and seniors, or third years and fourth years, however that works out, to be interns there. So I interned a year early, the summer after my sophomore year at AMD, and then again after my junior year.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, definitely I agree with that. I personally think you should always be pursuing an internship unless you know you want to spend a summer learning how to bake bread. Hey, good for you. But if if it's between working at a pizza shop or doing an internship, I think sometimes it's tough to get one. You may not always get one. There may be a summer that you kind of take time off, but I think you should kind of always be pursuing that. But to David's point, it can be a little tricky getting one after your freshman or your sophomore year. But there are opportunities that aren't necessarily internships, but like work experiences where maybe you're not doing engineering, but you're working on a plant floor, like having your hands on medical devices that you're manufacturing. So there's opportunities like that too that aren't quote internships. But
Also,
right?
yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to overload anybody, but I did want to add that like it's a lot like Peter says, where there's a lot of opportunities that aren't necessarily like formal internships, where like in high school, I didn't get paid for my time at CU Denver, but I just kind of tried emailing professors in the labs there, because if you see that someone's doing cool work, especially at CSU, I've found that a lot of the professors are really very willing to talk about their work if you just shoot them an email, and it's not terribly difficult to get in and working, maybe not for pay right away, but it's really valuable experience, and it's not totally impossible to get that experience like early on.
Definitely. And more companies are hiring earlier. We're seeing more and more companies hiring even after freshman and sophomore year. And I can tell you, I come from 30 years at HP, where we even hired juniors and seniors in high school over their summer to do programming for, I worked on a program called The Machine. We built the world's largest single memory computer. We hired even juniors and seniors out of high school over the summer to program on there. And I would agree with what Peter said too. Keep your eyes open for these as early as you can. Definitely worthwhile. I told my freshman seminar class last semester that, okay, if they, after their freshman year, if they decided they didn't want to do an internship, then really they'd probably start to feel a lot of pressure after their sophomore year to do one. Because if you don't get one after your sophomore year, you only have one more summer between junior and senior year. And I cannot tell you how many juniors I've sat with in my office going, oh my gosh, I only have one more summer to get a semester. I have got to get one, kind of thing. So keep that in mind. That time in college goes so quickly. So I completely agree with Peter, look for that always. So, and David, did you have something to add?
Yeah, you mentioned hiring kids just out of high school or even high schoolers at HPE. So I actually did that. That was my summer at HPE right after my senior year of high school after I graduated. And that was great. And it really set me up to then do summers at AMD. And it kind of, it was a unique experience, but it definitely prepared me for subsequent internships.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. And I saw Rachel's note in there too. And again, I would temper it just a little bit in saying a lot more companies are starting to entertain those freshmen and sophomores. So definitely heed Rachel's advice in there. Start going to the career fairs early. And again, that's whether you end up at CSU or any other college. Go to those career fairs early. Even if you just go up and ask them, hey, I've heard of your company, but I don't know exactly what you do. Can you tell me more? Or tell me about the particular, most companies are pretty good sized, and tell me, what area of your company do you work for? What kind of work do you do? To start learning about things, start getting your name out there. So great. Other questions? I'll look back in the chat, make sure I didn't miss any.
There was a question about the process for applying for internships.
Yes, all of you from your experience.
I think it really depends on the company. So like, for instance, a company like Medtronic, where seems like, I don't know, all of my peers want to work for Medtronic. I know a lot of those internships, they start the hiring process like the year before. So if you wanted to start working there this May, you would have needed to start your application processes back in, as early as August or September. Whereas there are other companies, like I had, due to COVID, a position, like they weren't able to hire me over last summer. And like in the middle of the summer, I reached out to a company that I had connection for, and they weren't necessarily hiring an intern. They hadn't posted anything, but I just said, hey, are you looking for someone? And I actually eventually like started interning for them. So, but I know people that, or like even myself, I went to a career fair in the spring of one year, and I ended up starting my co-op that May. So it was a matter of like just a couple months, whereas other people, it's like 8 months in advance. So I think it really depends on the company.
Yeah, I think I can speak more to within the university. That's where most of my labs and internships have been, was directly through professors. And I know for me, one of them I got from directly going up to a professor. I had seen an email about work he was doing, and I was just really interested. I had him for one of my courses, and he hired me right then and there. And I started working in that lab that next week. So, and then my second one was with the SHORE program that Susan runs, and it's a great way to help connect you with different professors, and that's also a paid position. And so I know it can be a lot less intimidating to try and find something on campus first. It's definitely a good place to start if you're not quite ready to reach out to a company, because most professors are really, really willing, and they want younger students because they're able to really train you those first few months, and then you'll be able to work for them for many years while you're on campus. So it's a lot less intimidating if you want to start there. It's a great starting spot.
Great. Great advice too. Reaching out to companies or professors, as both Peter and Emma Kate pointed out, always a good thing. You'd be amazed at how many professors don't fill all their undergraduate research spots simply because they don't find the right match. So if you're someone who sees work being done by a professor, I know at CSU, you can go on our website and look at the different engineering disciplines, and you can look at different professors. I know that I'm sure that at other universities you can as well. So definitely do that. And then on the whole job front too, always reach out. Definitely one thing Peter said at first was some companies like August, September, they start looking for the next summer. There are quite a few of those. So definitely keep in mind starting your search early, but definitely don't eliminate your search just because, like right now, if you were a student who wanted an internship this summer, I'd still be looking for it. I know there are still openings out there. So other questions?
On that same chat post, Karen had also mentioned like how competitive are internships and how likely are students to land one.
Okay, very good. Very good. Sorry, I missed that last part of the question. I can tell you that at CSU, I know that over 80% of our students will do an internship before they graduate. Our co-op program is still growing. It's probably not as extensive as other universities. That being said, we probably have almost 30 companies we have partnered with and have partnerships with that we've worked with in the past. So there are still some great opportunities. I think doing your internship or your co-op oftentimes can lead to a job offer. So definitely important to do. But like I said, usually a little over 80% of our students will do an internship before they graduate. And it's something like around 60% of them will do 2 internships or more. So I think it's highly likely to get an internship. Hopefully that helped, Karen. And if you have other questions, either type it in the chat or raise your hand there and let us know, or unmute yourself, excuse me. Other questions? While we're waiting to see questions come in the chat or in the room, can all of our panelists maybe talk about what is your favorite class been at CSU? I'm going to go through here. If you're ready to answer, unmute yourself. I won't put you on the spot here.
Probably my favorite class was an introduction to programming in C++. So it was not an easy class, and the professor had very high expectations of us. But he also was very good at what he did, and he had a very good understanding of C++, which allowed him to teach it to us very well. And so that was definitely one of my favorite classes.
Great. Thanks, David.
Yeah, I think for me, my favorite was one that I took freshman year, is an honors seminar on infectious diseases. And that wasn't something that I'd thought of too much. I knew I wanted to go into more medical side, but I was really set on cancer research. And then he had an amazing seminar, and I fell in love with different infectious diseases and pathogenesis. And it was just such an engaging class, especially with the honors program. They do a great job. So it was truly us just learning about it. You weren't memorizing facts for a test. He just truly cared that you understand the material, and we got to learn about just really crazy things that you don't get to learn about in normal classes.
Very nice. Thank you, Kate.
I'd say I can't speak on this too heavily because I'm only a first year, but I will say if anybody's looking to be a prospective mechanical engineer, if you ever have the chance to take a class from Dr. Bishara, he's a really great teacher. I mean, he's really down to earth and very, very good with like relating to students. And I'm in his Mech 105 class right now, and it's a really challenging class for sure, but definitely like a great experience.
Great.
I think for me, this is kind of a tough one, but I think most like the most related, like the most technical course would be probably mechatronics. You learn how to like interface with an Arduino, and I feel like that really kind of set me up for success in regards to like if I ever needed to do anything with electronics. Maybe my favorite course though is I'm currently taking Art 100 as an elective. And it's like really refreshing to take a break from all of the technical coursework and just learn about like art history and how to go to a museum and look at art. And so while there are, you know, plenty of calculus classes and thermodynamics and all of these classes that you're like at the library late hours for, you do like, there are technical electives and broad electives and humanities and other fields. So I don't know, I'm enjoying my art class. It's kind of a nice experience for me.
Very cool. Definitely nice. Can all of you tell our students, our prospective students too, what is the coolest thing you have gotten to do as part of one of your internships? What is something maybe unexpected, really fun? What are one of the coolest things you have gotten to do as part of your internship? So again, I'll just wait for you to unmute yourself to see who's ready. But
If no one's ready,
Sure.
I can go first. But in my first internship, we were working with amniotic fluid stem cells that we were deriving into heart cells that we were going to be plating on heart valves to regenerate heart valves in infants that had underdeveloped like left ventricles. So I thought it was really, really cool to like actually learn how to derive this cell, and like you can watch it start to beat under its own volition under the microscope, and that's like really a cool moment. So there's definitely a lot of really crazy stuff that you get to do at a young age, which is I thought it was a really cool opportunity.
sounds like it. That is awesome. Others, that'll be hard to top, but others have some fun or cool things you've gotten to do during your internship or co-op, I should say as well.
I can go. So mine's, I've been a little restricted just because of COVID. So actual work in a wet lab has been pretty limited, at least for mine. But I'd say my favorite part is I really like reading journal articles. I'm kind of weird in that way, but just how much I've gotten to learn about pathogenesis of different cancers. The team that I'm on right now, we were looking at SMID2, which is the proto-oncogene. It causes a couple different types of cancers. And so just really getting to dive deep and really leading that research on my own. And now I'm looking at different enzyme that's really related to Alzheimer's. So I think that's been the coolest for me is I get to kind of drive what I'm looking into. And then hopefully we get in the wet lab this semester is a goal to actually be starting to try our inhibitors that we're developing right now.
Very cool. And I have to admit, I've heard things along those same lines from other students too. I mean, we all hear about cancer, we all hear about Alzheimer's. When you start to get to dig into that and truly understand what's behind that, that's a pretty cool aha moment. So great, thank you. David or Peter, anything you all want to share?
For me, kind of a similar idea of like you get to really dive into the details of a certain part of your field that you're looking at. So for me, I was working with an IEEE standard, which is essentially a paper that kind of defines a certain, I don't know, it's available to like all the companies that want to use it. In this case, it was a standard related to testing computer chips. Yes, yeah, that's correct. So I got to look at that, really work with that, and I even noticed a couple errors in the standard, which I don't know, I thought was really cool that I was able to understand it or understand that part of it to the level where I was able to say, hey, wait a second, this doesn't quite look right, and contribute even a very small thing to that standard. So
Excellent. Yeah, looking at those standards is pretty cool, right? And you start to understand, why are all of our computers able to communicate? Because they follow certain standards, right? That they need to. So you look at ways they communicate, ways they're built, just all those kind of things. So cool. Peter, did you have anything to add then?
Yeah, I think for me, the coolest thing I've experienced is getting intimate with the medical device development procedure, and like seeing everything that goes into developing a new medical device. So when I did my first co-op term, I came on board, and the business unit that I was working at was towards the end of a project. And these medical device companies will have these projects to make a new device, and it'll be 3-4 year long project. So I got the last like 8 months of that. I helped with like the verification and validation testing, qualification and whatnot. And then at the end of that, I got to like make some prototypes for a new product, a new development. And then that was at the end of 2019. I was in school for all of 2020. And then I just started working in January. And that product, the original product, was released by the FDA and like approved and everything. And now the business unit, like all hands on deck for the project that I had done some prototypes for. So for me, I don't know, that's a really cool experience, because now it's like I was just doing these crude models and prototypes, and now it's becoming the real deal. And so I don't know, for me, that was a really cool experience to come back and see that they like upper management said, hey, let's go with this idea. So
Wonderful. And that is awesome. And I think what all 4 students really pointed to as well is that you get this chance to truly work on solving real life problems, real life products, whether it's prototyping, testing, all of those kind of things, working with the standards that apply to the products. I know that, if you would go further back in time, a lot of times when companies hired interns, you might get the jobs that no one else wanted kind of thing. Companies have learned that that's not the way to do good internships. And I feel like we do a pretty good job too at bringing companies into our career affairs as well that have internships that truly allow students to get hands-on and participate truly in those businesses and that research. And so that's one of the really cool things. It's no longer, oh, you're the intern, you could go make copies for me or something, because it's very much how it was when I was in school. Now it is truly tapping the incredible knowledge that you all have, especially being in school right now, and the enthusiasm. So very cool. I have to share one other example I know from our Scott Scholars, from one who's graduating this year. She did an internship in Iceland for the summer. She did not do study abroad at the same time, although it sounds like that's definitely a possibility too, to do an internship abroad. And some folks have done that. But one of our Scott Scholars who's graduating worked on a path in Iceland and some of the restoration of a walking path. She was a civil and environmental engineer. So she got to go to Iceland. Of course, she got to have a little fun touristy time as well, but then they actually slept in tents. And she got to work on this path and restoring this path in Iceland. And she raves about the experience. So the multitude of opportunities and internships and all kinds of varieties, doing different tasks, there are just tons of them out there. So let me pause to see. I don't see any more in the chat, although as we've seen here before, I've missed a couple. So, or if I missed part of one, I think we're still good there. Anyone else in the room have questions? thoughts? How about from those of you on the panel, any advice to these students as they're looking? It could be related to internships or just as they're just looking at their college experience and making decisions. What kind of advice do you have for them? What kind of things do you wish you would have known when you were applying and making your decision?
I can kind of go a little bit. So at least regarding the college decision, I know it was going to CSU, which was definitely not an easy decision for me, just because so many of my peers were going out of state. So I think just really being confident and knowing where the best program for you is, the best program for someone else might be out of state. For me, that ended up being 10 minutes from where I've been living for the past 10 years. So I don't think that's one thing that I wish I would have known, is that the further you go does not mean it's a better university or better program for you. I'm doing things that I would not have been able to do anywhere else had I gone there. I know so many of my friends at different universities, they truly are not able to get those internships. They're not able to get the research with those professors because it's so competitive. So I just wish I would have known that the distance you go definitely does not define the program and the quality that you'll get, and that you can have an amazing education and all these amazing opportunities, even if you also live in Fort Collins and it's 10 minutes from where you've grown up your whole life.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma Kate.
I guess to piggyback on that, an emphasis on, like, with the assumption that most of our viewers of this are like looking to make a decision on going to college, right, and our high schoolers, I like forget about what other people are doing, right? Like, I know at my school is like, oh, you got to go at A&M or University of Texas, like those are the best schools, and like you got to study this or whatever. But I just forget about all of that and just focus on yourself and get creative with your options. Don't rule anything out. And then I think at the end of the day, like kind of as it sounds like Emma Kate did, like trust your gut. I came to Fort Collins and was just like, oh my goodness, this has got to be the place to be. And then a couple weeks later, I was like, well, I feel like A&M's a better option for these reasons. And then ultimately I was like, no, I went there, I fell in love with it. Don't like let other things kind of stray away. That was a little haphazard, but
No problem. It was great. Thank you, Peter. I agree completely. So Eric or David, anything to add? Are we all good?
I got out of that whole college selection process probably about a year ago, so it's a little still trying to process everything, but I mean, I can kind of more speak to what it's like trying to find a college with COVID, because I started my first semester when all of this stuff sprung up, and I mean, it kind of reminds you that you have to really look at the opportunities, like Emma Kate said, that you can be presented with, like these big glamorous universities like in the South and East Coast, and like that are where you think you should be going if you're gonna like try to be a little more ambitious and like successful, but that's just not the case. Like you can find it's really like what you put into it. So if you look at it more like where you want to be comfortable there and not necessarily like you want to feel not out of place, I guess. I'm stumbling all over my words, but just trying to say that it's more about the fit, at least for me.
I agree completely. And as I talk with students, I definitely tell them, well, obviously we all here are biased for CSU. Full disclosure, like I said, I went to CSU, my husband did, my kids did, right? So obviously I have a love for CSU. However, I'm most interested in each one of you who are here visiting virtually, that you find the best fit for you. Would we love it if it ended up being CSU? Yes, but if this isn't a good fit, then don't force fit it, right? Go out there and truly find what is the best fit for you. So
And I think we also just got a question in the chat. Karen
Yes,
asked that if the size of the school is intimidating. And I would say no. I don't know if my other panelists would agree, but it really just kind of feels like home. Everybody's just super nice, and the faculty and staff are super approachable, and they want to get to know your name. It's not like everybody's disinterested. They really like show that they care.
Yeah, I think a big part of that for me that I've noticed is obviously CSU as a university is very large, but our individual colleges are a lot smaller, and especially the programs within those colleges. So I know for me, the CBE BME program is fairly small. So I know most of those people I've had repeat professors already, even just in my second year. And so you really get to know the people within your college and especially your program really well. So yes, it is a really big university, and that was something that I was intimidated with at first. But you do really get close with all of those professors within your college. And definitely like lecture size, if that's something that you're worried about. I have had a few like 300, 250-person lectures. And I've loved all of those just as much as I've loved my 18-person honor seminar classes. But definitely as you go in your major, it gets a lot smaller and you do really develop those relationships a lot deeper.
There are a lot of different communities on campus, like as Kate said, like whether it be your program specifically and your peers, or if you're really into rock climbing, there's groups of people that go rock climbing. And I don't know, I guess CSU is supposed to be about 65,000 students, which somewhere around there, which has always seemed very strange to me, or 50,000, because we like walk around campus before the pandemic and go like, where is everyone? Like, where is all these thousands of people? But you'd be surprised how many people you like start to notice that you may never talk to, but you're walking the same paths and you're like, oh, I always see this person. So I don't know, it's never felt huge to me, despite it being the numbers being large and the campus being large. It always has felt like kind of close knit. I don't know.
Yeah, one advantage of a larger school like CSU is it's going to have more resources, and just there's more here. And a smaller school might not have some of the things that we do, some of the resources that we have. But then, yeah, like everyone else is saying, there's like the subdivisions that you find yourself to be a part of, the college, the program, the people who are the same year as you in your program. It gets very small very quick from that large, thousands of people number that attend here in some way, shape, or form. So, and then there's another question in the chat.
yes, I saw it. You want to read that, David? Do you have it?
Sure. So Rodrigo asks, or he's wondering whether he should go to CU or CSU, asking for advice about how he should decide. I guess some people from my school here in Fort Collins, from my high school, they went to CU, and I fully respect them for doing that, because they were going into I think just like straight up med school or something like that. They wanted, one student I'm thinking of in particular wanted to be a doctor or something like that. If you're looking at vet med, then CSU is your best bet. So it's just a question of, for me, what are you looking into going into? Which school has the better program? And for me and for everyone else here, I think that answer was CSU had the better program in our field.
I would say I think that's very important and maybe the first thing you should look at. But once you kind of get through that question, Rodrigo, which I'm assuming maybe you have, I highly recommend, visiting both in person if possible, and try and get a feel for the culture and the community, like the feel of the culture on campus as well as around campus. I love Boulder. I've visited quite a few times. I've walked around the campus, but they're two very, from my opinion, as someone who's not from Colorado, they feel like two very different schools and two very different cities. You have to look at the surrounding area too, right? So, spend a day walking around Boulder, spend a day walking around Fort Collins, or trying out restaurants. I don't know. Try and get a feel for the area around campus, what's available around you. I think they're two very different schools in a lot of different ways when you look at just like the culture and surrounding areas. I don't know.
Yeah, to go off that, I would say don't discount the small feelings of it. I know I looked at CU for a while too. And I would say a lot of those differences are really nuanced. And so, yes, programs like that made it really clear for me of just this was a better program for me. But I know for a lot of my friends, it was a pretty even split of people that stayed in state that went to CU versus CSU. And it was really just those little how it feels. And so I'd say definitely don't discredit those. I know going to college is a really big decision, but don't discredit just that gut feeling that you have if you're leaning towards one or the other. You probably subconsciously know. And so I'd say just really don't discredit those, because I know I was for a while.
Very good. Yeah, and I know during this time of COVID, that's kind of tough to do, but it is still possible to visit, to be COVID safe, and go see colleges, most definitely. We have another question that came in. What about comparing the School of Mines? It says the biggest difference is size and diversity. Most definitely, some of the things the students already talked about, right? And some of the opportunities you'll get with the different size. Do any of our panelists want to comment? Did any of you consider Mines?
Mines was my number one choice for a while, and so was CU. I actually my dad went to CSU, my mom went to CU, so there was a lot of talks about which way it was going to go, and I was really into the idea of Mines. I grew up like 5 minutes from campus, so it really felt like home, because I could almost see my house from there. But there's definitely a huge difference in size and like you said, size and diversity. But I'd also say that when looking at between these three schools, like the three big ones in Colorado, you kind of have to think about, like all the panelists have said, and I know we're beating a dead horse, but you really have to look at like which one's the best fit, and what's really important to you. Like, are you going skiing every weekend if you're really into fishing, or if you're really into like trying to get an internship like really quickly? It depends. Like, you have the biggest school is CSU or CU for sure. CSU is bigger in size for sure, but CU is definitely like a lot of people and a lot more is going on. But CSU definitely feels more like more of the outdoorsy kind of more laid back area. And then Mines is more of just a real taste of almost Denver area.
I also looked at School of Mines, and I also applied there. So I guess same kind of thing as with CU. School of Mines is a great school. They focus on different things than CU and CSU. Obviously, they're limited to, I believe they're limited to like tech type of majors. So I was looking at their computer engineering or their equivalent program, of course. But they, just CSU ended up being a better fit for me. But I definitely think that School of Mines is a great fit for, it's a great fit for some people. And so if School of Mines, if Golden feels like it'd be a better place for you to go, hey, but yeah. What the other panelists have said is great advice.
So just to add on really quick, I know for mine specifically, I looked at all those schools. It was the medical aspect. I thought that CSU gave a lot more broader opportunities. So you can obviously do research within the engineering college, but you can also do it. There's a lot of cool stuff at the like within biology and different professors in there. And so I liked that it was a little bit broader. I felt like of Mines, they're really focused on engineering and more that technical industrial side of it. Whereas at CSU, if you're just a little more unsure, or if you want to go more into the medical route, I think it, at least in my experience so far, it's had a lot more room and a lot more opportunities in that way. And that's what shifted me away from mines. But like David said, it's a really good fit for some people. So definitely not to discredit those universities.
Great inputs. Eric, did you have one
Also,
last?
yeah, I just wanted to add real quick. I know when I was looking at those 3 schools, I really wanted to kind of like get more specific about like what each does. And I kind of found out that mines really has their emphasis on material science, like a lot of petroleum engineering and a lot of stuff with alternative energies. And then CU is more of like physics and astrophysics. Like their astrophysics program is really top notch. I think it's ranked some top 5 in the nation or something. And then CSU is where I think all the people here are more geared towards the medical side, or besides David, because we do have great computer science, but the vet school here is incredible. And then also our biology stuff is really great here. So you kind of get a little bit of everything. And that's kind of where I find the biggest differences between the 3. So I just wanted to add that. But yeah, what everybody said is also great advice as well.
Very good. Thank you all. I really appreciate everyone who's come today and all of the panelists. It is 4 o'clock, and I know some of you have tours to go off to. If you continue to have questions, I am going to hang out here a little bit more to see if there's any others. But also, you should have gotten the address, and I'll type it in the chat here. It's explore@engr.colostate.edu, where you can send any additional questions if you have to run off to another session or just don't have time to. Again, I'm going to type that in the chat here, and I will hang on for another few minutes or as long as anyone wants to talk. But again, thank you so much for all of our panelists for coming today. I really appreciate it. Emma, Kate, Eric, David, and Peter. Thank you so much for doing that. And to all of you prospective students, thank you for attending, spending some time. I know it's not ideal virtually, but we really do appreciate it and really do want to help you get any questions you have answered and help you make the best decision for you. So thanks, everyone. And give me a second. I don't multitask. I don't talk and type. So let me type that in the chat if you have further questions as well.
I got it for you, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Happy
Thank you to
help manage
Rachel
the chat.
Thank you so much. Let's see if we still have anyone in here. We have just a couple of prospective students still here.